Happy Thursday, Facebook friends. Welcome back to Facebook. I'm Angie Garza, Director of Professional Learning and Educational Services at ROE 47, serving Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside counties. And if you're joining us back here this fine November, we are back here on Facebook for another edition of Teacher Talk. And today's Teacher Talk is celebrating in a very comprehensive way November, which is all about kindness. So as we kind of dive into our conversations celebrating November filled with kindness and generosity, we want to also understand that part of that kindness is all about understanding others, developing and deploying empathy, and really just supporting and uplifting every single person in our community. And so to do that, we are going to have some conversations around trauma and mental health. Super excited today to welcome one of our very own to our Teacher Talk platform. But before we introduce our special guest for this morning, I want to say a very happy and kind good morning to my friend, colleague, and co-host, Ms. Stacy Dingus. Stacy, good morning. I had no idea that November was all about kindness, and I would traditionally associate that with gratitude. But it's great to take a time out this morning to talk about how we can be more empathetic and supportive of everyone in our communities.
Good morning, Angie, and happy to be here. Yes, definitely a celebration for sure for the month of November as we kind of reflect, getting closer to the halfway mark of a school year, starting the new year. Definitely this conversation of social emotional learning and mental health and being aware of others is a topic that is talked about often in our school communities. We are well aware that teachers cannot control what happens outside that 8 to 3 school day, but it does affect the classroom learning. It affects our everyday, it affects our students. And so this focus on mental health, kindness, as you had said, with the month of November, social emotional learning is definitely something that we could all probably learn a little bit more about, and how knowledge and building our knowledge about that is definitely something that can seep into our classroom and really just make a better school week, school day for our teachers and our students. So excited to have this conversation today, maybe learn a little bit more about some of the offerings that we have and serve as a resource for our school communities.
Conversations this morning just aren't about our students. They're also about the adults in our educational communities and how we can better support and understand every single person inside the school building and inside of our communities. The other thing that you mentioned was the fact that we are headed into the middle of the school year. It is really hard to believe. And so our teachers and our staff in each of our school buildings have gotten to know their students a little bit more. And so we might be understanding or seeing some of those strengths or challenges when it comes to social emotional development or mental health or trauma. We are also facing the holiday season, which for some of our students and adults and families might be a challenging time to navigate. So thinking about all of that, we have wonderful supports and conversations and services that we have through our office and through our partnerships to help support each and every individual in Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside counties. And if we haven't hyped it up enough, there is one person who is just kind of the face of our organization for having some of those conversations, and that is our social emotional learning specialist, Grace Heimerdinger-Baake. Grace, thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Teacher Talk. You are no stranger to Teacher Talk, and you are no stranger to our educational communities. You've done a lot with family engagement. You've done a lot to engage our school communities in conversations around social emotional learning and mental health and trauma. But we would like for you to take this opportunity as we kick off our Teacher Talk this morning to reintroduce yourselves to our listeners out here on YouTube and Facebook. Talk a little bit more about your role at the office, because it has expanded in the last year, and your connection. This is maybe we need to unpack this a little bit. Your connection to our Area 2 social emotional learning hub.
Thank you so much, Angie, for that introduction. I greatly appreciate that. And it has been such a privilege to add social emotional learning specialist to my family education and engagement title. I started social emotional learning specialist jobs and responsibilities in July, and it has been a race, but such an exciting race to help support not only our students, our educators, but also our families and the broader community. I think that's an important piece in supporting social emotional learning and talking about kindness and resilience. But just a little bit, you mentioned the Social Emotional Learning Hub. About 4 years ago, the Center for Childhood Resilience and other agencies across Illinois got together and they started what was a REACH process. It was intentional work with schools about the trauma that our students are facing, as well as all of those things that help support a safe and regulated and healing-centered schools. And since then, a lot of changes have been made, but all for the better. And so this year, the Center for Childhood and Resilience, paired with the Stress and Trauma Treatment Center across with the State Board of Illinois, have made this statement more broader as we understand that our students and our educators need additional support and that we need to look more at more than just at the trauma that our students are facing, but all of these different pillars as we'll get into. But across the state, our SEL hubs are broken into 6 different hubs. We get together throughout the month to help brainstorm ways that we can support our teachers and our students and other ways that we can integrate and support not only resilience in the schools, but building a more stronger, resilient Illinois. So this new initiative is called RSSI, and it is Resilient Supportive Schools, Illinois.
Grace, when we say the words like mental health or trauma, what do we really mean by that? I know something that I have learned is sitting through some of these PDs, the events that have been offered, is that trauma is different to everyone, to the teachers, to the students, to the ones that are experiencing it. Why is it important to talk about this, to talk about mental health and social emotional learning inside of our classrooms?
Mental health is looking at like your brain, your emotional health. But if we look at it a little bit more deeper and we look at what trauma is very subjective. Trauma affects everyone. And trauma is how you, the individual, perceives and how that experience, whatever that experience might be, affects not only our thoughts, but it also affects our physiological bodies. And so I remember this analogy, and I like to use it a lot in terms of talking about trauma and how it affects different people differently, and how trauma is so common and it affects 1 in 2 people. But by the time children are 16 years of age in the state of Illinois, over 67% of our children have experienced at least one traumatic event. And going back to that definition of what trauma is that perceived how an experience affects that particular individual. So say a car accident. So you and your friend are in a car and you are driving and your friend and you get into a car accident. You're driving, it wasn't as bad, like the car is probably totaled, but you're safe. Your friend is safe. You just go on your day. You're not affected by it. You just move on. And you drive on that same street every day where the car accident happens. You think nothing of it. You buy a new car. Your friend, who was in the passenger seat, had very little control over the accident, but is struggling with headaches, cannot drive or even ride in a car on that same street. And so we would say that that friend has experienced trauma in the sense that in that same experience, one person was okay and that the other person had effects from that experience that has made it difficult to go on with their life. There's this wise words from Bezel Van Hark, and he says, he's the author of Body Keeps Score, that trauma affects not only your mental health, but your whole body and how you perceive and how you live your life. And so it is so hard to say, oh yeah, this person that was traumatic. It may be traumatic for you, but it may not be for that next person that's sitting next to you. So it's very subjective. And as a community, we need to understand that. And I think that will help with our stigma that's surrounding mental health and trauma.
I love that we're having these conversations because there has been such a stigma historically around talking about trauma or mental health or even social emotional learning. And so just verbalizing the fact that this is an important conversation to have, here's what these things mean, how are we working together, that is a powerful movement, not just for the people who are trying to make change in our communities, but also for our communities in general, making it more acceptable and making it a supported experience to talk about trauma and what we as individuals might need to be the most productive and the best people that we can possibly be. So I'm curious, you mentioned that this is the work of a village. And so our office and we are all working together with our community partners to really shift that conversation around trauma and mental health in our service area. And you mentioned the word resilience. So can you talk a little bit about how we are busting those barriers and talking about mental health and trauma in our area in a very healthy way?
It's so fun to be a part of this work and refocusing ourselves to think. We've spent many years on what is trauma and being trauma informed, but trying to bridge that to more resilient, hope-filled messaging, but as well as kind of conveying that there's trauma. Trauma is existing. There are challenges when we are trying to get care for our mental health. But the good news is that the perception of mental health and trauma and that stigma that is behind it is lessening, right? Because we are talking about it, because we are becoming more trauma informed, but it's now time to kind of push ourselves to a more resilient thinking, hopeful mindset. And so I am so excited to be part of it, part of the effort in trying to create this community approach to a more resilient community. And so part of that has been sending out and distributing trauma trifolds and resources to our schools, but also our business community, right? And taking a more broader approach to looking at, there are so many interconnections and so many connections that are at play. And so let's approach this from all angles, from all different sectors. And so we are excited to be able to start handing out our table tents. Our table tents have these messaging that says trauma is normal. Trauma is unfortunately a thing that exists in our communities, but there is support, there's help, there are resources, and it's very common. And so with the support of our chambers across Lee-Ogle Whiteside County, we are distributing table tents to workplaces that will be in break rooms across the 3-county area, as well as restaurants, and just trying to get that message out there that, hey, this is normal. But also, how do you support someone that is going through an experience that has caused that individual trauma, or that are stress, right? Toxic stress is a thing that is happening. And repeated experience of toxic stress can be damaging to the body as well. And so how do we have these tough conversations? So being able to provide resources, not only for support for that individual, but how can I, as a friend, treat my friends and my neighbors and my community with kindness and also support and hearing their story, and to just foster the sense of, hey, that happened and I'm so sorry that happened to you. How can I help you? Or is there anything I can do? Or sometimes that answer is just sitting with that person and offering them and holding space for them and saying, hey, I'm here with you and for you. And that makes a difference. And that is practicing kindness and fostering hope and resilience in our community. And just sitting and giving that person a hug or silence can be life-changing for those individuals.
Grace, this message of hope and resilience is almost refreshing, especially for those of us who have kind of lived in this conversation about our schools and helping our teachers handle and understand really the traumas that students are bringing to the classroom, and then what those emotions do to the school day. So I love this idea of hope and resilience. How are we supporting our schools with this message? You talked a little bit about how we're doing this with our business community, but what about our schools? And how has the support changed within the past year?
Great questions. And I think it begins with that mindset. And so that's why I was so excited to see that the SEL work, as well as the State Board of Education, the Center for Childhood and Resilience, kind of shift their mindset, right? When you're talking about trauma-informed and trauma, mindset matters, right? And so having this focus of resilience and hope-filled conversations is incredible and can help our teachers and our educators, our administrators, help with the things that they're seeing within their classrooms. So as part of RSSI and the SEL work, our schools have opted in to join the work. We've had many schools. We've had about 30 schools that have done the work already in those early 2020, 2021. They've done the work already. They completed the TRSIA, which is an assessment looking at trauma and trauma-informed practices and strategies. But now with the shift, what comes with it is that schools are able to look at how does the other data that we collect throughout the school year, 5 essentials, the state report card, as well as this RSSI survey, this Resilient Supportive Schools Illinois survey, and how does this encompass to a larger, more systematic approach. And so it's fun to look at the systems to see how we can build capacity to cope with stress in life, not only at the student level, but also the educator level. And so with that, we are fortunate to have 11 schools that completed the RSSI survey, with the hope of being able to not only look at trauma-informed and healing center approaches, but also look at their social emotional learning and how they're integrating that into their curriculum. So how are they integrating it into math? How are they integrating it into reading and social studies and science and overall just health and wellness into their everyday academics, right? I like to look at social emotional learning as the plate on which we serve all of our other academics, right? Social emotional learning should be integrated into the everyday experience. And not only do they get to look at social emotional learning, they get to they have the opportunity to take a more broader approach to look at their mental health initiatives. What type of mental health resources or counseling can they offer not only for their students, but also for their educators? We can also have conversations. Another pillar of this is let's talk about race and diversity and equity and inclusion. And let's have those conversations. And so the exciting part about this new RSSI program is that we are now taking a more broader approach that allows our schools to see, okay, where are we needing extra support? We, with the support of our office, myself, and the Area 2 Hub, create an action plan that is tailored to the school that has professional development, as well as changing systems that are happening with the school. We call that MTSS, and that is such a great tool that we can really help and give services to all students, but also the students that really need that extra support. And when we can impact systems, we have a larger impact, and everyone benefits from that. And so that's what I'm really excited about this new adventure. It is a work in progress, but that's how it is. And we're just really excited to hit the ground running to support these schools, their staff, their educators, but as well as the families, because an important part of all of this is how do we continue the family and school connections and partnerships, which ties in perfectly with my other job title, which is so fun and so exciting.
Perfect segue into my next question, because you've talked about the supports for our communities and our schools, the children who are entering our buildings every day, as well as those teachers and staff members. But an important part of this equation is our families. And you wearing that dual hat, it is really exciting to see you blend those worlds, and that is so important. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of those resources that are available for families through the work that we're doing here at the Regional Office of Education?
We, of course, have our more tier 2, tier 3 interventions that I immediately think of that provides more comprehensive support to those families that need it. And I think of Nexus and Attendance. Those are referral based through our schools. But we also have Iris too, which is another resource that anyone is able to use and access that provides connection pieces. But an exciting thing that happened this year is that we've been able to host parent universities. These parent universities have been focused on anxiety, navigating special education, understanding behavior, financial literacy, how to juggle, how to have conversations with your children about parenting beyond that screen. What is technology doing to our children? How do we support our children? How do we have those tough conversations? And an exciting thing that we get to do this year is practice goal setting with our families. We are having a New Year's Eve party, December 31st in Sterling at Elevate, and we're going to be doing goal setting. Goal setting is a great opportunity for our families to have conversation about what went well this year, what did not go well, and what is our hopes and dreams for 2025. When we can have these tough conversations and can start not just having tough conversations, but conversations in general with our children and helping foster that and giving those skills and support to our families, we can foster a more resilient community. And so with everything that I mentioned with Nexus, Attendance Support, Iris, our parent university events, as well as in-person fun events that have some type of educational component to it, we're just excited to work with our other agencies and organizations as well to help build a stronger, more connected community that our families know what resources are available to them and how we can better support them so that they can support their children.
My head is spinning. I feel like the amount of good information and valuable resources that you just have mentioned is huge. So for those of us that were listening and we're like, oh, I didn't have a chance to write that down, or I want more information about this, where could someone go? How do they learn more about all of the things?
So you can always send an email, but our website has so many different information, a family engagement section that's on the front page that will connect you to community resources as well as Iris, but also check out our Facebook. If you're joining from YouTube, make sure to go back to Facebook and check out all of the upcoming flyers. If you're looking for some other additional support or where do I find these upcoming events, Facebook is your best bet. You can also go to bit.ly/m/ROE47 family And from there, you'll be able to see all of the great events that are upcoming, subscribe to the Family and Community newsletter, as well as seek additional resources. And if you don't know where to turn and you need extra support, you can't find what resource would be beneficial, you can fill out our coordinated intake, and our coordinated intake specialist will reach out to you, listen to what is going on and where you may need help, and then find the best organizations that will be able to help your needs and provide that warm handoff for you and for your family. So we are so excited to offer so many different resources and events and parent education to help and support our families in Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside County.
Facebook friends, we started off our teacher talk this morning talking about November is the month of kindness, but as we've discovered, it is so much more. Today, we've talked about resilience and empathy and compassion. And as Grace mentioned, we are working towards stronger resourced families, students, educators, and communities here in Lee, Ogle, and Whiteside counties. And so I'd just like to take a time out to say thank you to Grace for all of her work in spearheading this campaign, these conversations, these partnerships, the outreach. It is a lot of work. And so thank you so much, Grace, not only for taking time out to be here this morning, but for all that you do for our office and for the work of developing kind, compassionate, resourced communities. As Grace mentioned, there are a host of resources that are available, not only from the SEL trauma family perspective that Grace has shared with us here this morning. We also have coordinated intake and a variety of other things available to our educators, students, families, and community members at ROE 47. So please check out the contents of this post, as well as our website and social media to learn more. In wrapping up this morning, I want to remind our viewers that, as Grace mentioned, 67% of our students have experienced a traumatic event. And according to the National Council for Mental Health, 70% of individuals in the United States, that's over 223 million people, have experienced a traumatic event. And so it is of the utmost importance that we come together as a community and talk about developing those systems and resources and outreach, and most importantly, kindness, empathy, and compassion in order to help our communities not only to maintain, but really to thrive. Author Mary Davis said, "We can't heal the world today, but we can begin with a voice of compassion, a heart of love, and an act of kindness." Thank you so much to our special guest here this morning, Grace Heimerdinger-Baake, our family engagement and social emotional learning specialist, and to my friend, colleague, and co-host, Ms. Stacy Dingus. We hope that each of you has learned something here this morning and want to thank you for your time as well. As we close out our teacher talk here this fine Thursday in November, we want to wish you a wonderful rest of your Thursday, an even better Friday, a kindness and compassion, gratitude-filled weekend, and we will see you right back here next Thursday for another edition of Teacher Talk.